Broadcasting live from global headquarters at RP Enterprises in Greenwood, Missouri.
Stand by on this frequency.
After 22 years of entertaining FM radio listeners across the U.S., this man is the owner and executive producer of the award-winning Heartland Waterfowl on Sportsman's Channel, CEO and founder of Dumar Chemical Solutions, and the man behind the mic of Papa Ron Radio voiceovers and production. He's the man, the myth, the legend, a global icon, future Nobel Prize winner, and of course he paid me to say all this.
Really?
Literally. Welcome to the Papa Ron Podcast. Here's your host, Ronnie Phillips. Ronnie Phillips.
All right, welcome back, episode 5. Yeah. Woo. Episode 5 of the Papa Ron Podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You can also not only tune in, listen to all of your podcast platforms. You can also watch this podcast on Spotify. You can watch this podcast on the Papa Ron Podcast YouTube channel. So I encourage you to check it out. And you can even, as far as be involved in the show, 816-558-6389. You can call, leave a voicemail, or you can text in. Make sure you're following the Papa Ron Podcast on all your favorite social platforms, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. I even post some stuff on my LinkedIn page. You can find out about upcoming guests, different show topics, and then that will allow you to know why you would want to call in or text into the show. 816-558-6389. Of course, it's my goal every single week to film this podcast, and I wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for Marathon Media Management, my man. Say hello, Quentin.
What's up?
Quentin Verlinick. Dakota Thurn could not be here tonight, but Quentin and Dakota are a part of Marathon Media Management. They're a huge inspiration as to why I'm doing this podcast in the first place, and they helped me with the filming of this show, so big shout out to them. Also, I want to thank all of the people who have reached out over the last 4 weeks, because the feedback has been phenomenal. We've talked about a variety of different topics on the Papa Ron Podcast. It started off about my story, and I'm not going to get deep into that right now. You'll have to go back and listen if you haven't done that yet. But my story, that dealing with anxiety and depression and how that inspired the podcast in the first place, to the next week in episode 2, talking about the Heartland premiere and the battle against human trafficking and how bad that problem is right here in the middle of the Heartland. We've talked about suicide awareness, addiction, substance abuse. And then last week we had a lot of fun with Mike Keller and Jenny Matthews of the Q104 Morning Drive, talking about radio, and then their issues with anxiety, or Jenny's issues with anxiety and depression, and then the issues that both of those two had with their families with infertility. So a wide variety of topics, and this week we're going to challenge that even more. So tonight's guest is a good friend of ours, Quentin and I. He's a member of Heartland Waterfowl. He's the owner of Valley Oaks. I'm going to call it Valley Oaks Outdoors, okay, just so that everybody has the association there. He's kind of a jack of all trades. And Nate and I actually really connected a lot here in the last several months because of that particular hunt that we were on when I came clean with the stuff that I was battling internally. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome to the Papa Ron Podcast, Nate Meyer. Yeah.
Good evening, Ronnie, man. Thanks for having me. I'm pretty excited to talk about what I got to talk about, and what we've talked about in the past couple months. We've talked about a lot, that's for sure. Before we get into all of that, and let me just kind of preference it by saying Nate is is it the word retired? Should I say retired? United States? Yeah? Okay, well, anyway, he served in the United States. I don't know the best way to say it. I don't know. Nate served in the United States Navy, and you did a few tours. Was it Afghanistan or Iraq? One tour in Iraq. One tour in Iraq. 04, 05. Okay. So as you can imagine, Nate saw some things that none of us would ever want to see. And because of that, he has recently come clean with his battle with PTSD. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Before we get into that,
we mentioned that you are a part of Heartland Waterfowl. You're big into hunting. You're a huge contributor to what we do with Heartland Waterfowl. You've been a part of the show now for how long?
10 years.
Has it been? Well, I mean, but officially on board, you've probably been on board for 7.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you recently just acquired your own outfit operation, which is pretty cool. So where do we want to start? I think we ought to start with Valley Oaks Outdoors. So you had the opportunity with all the connections that you had in this region, in the Kansas City region, to open up your own deer hunting and goose hunting outfit operation.
Yeah, it's been October is when we got discussed buying it out. It started with the Ward family as a partnership, and they got to the point where the time wasn't worth it for them.
Mm-hmm.
And gave me the opportunity to purchase it. I was in a place to be able to do it and kind of grow from there with it. It's slowly, it's kind of taken a back step to everything else that I've been doing. I want it to grow to where I want it to be, but
Mm-hmm.
it hasn't been my main focus. There's been some other areas in life that have come up that I've kind of prioritized over it, but like the feedback and everything that comes with it has been tremendous. Books are constantly, we don't have very few openings this year going into it, and I haven't even advertised anything. So the response we get back is very positive. I try to operate different. We're about the experience. Missouri, you can only shoot 3 honkers, and
Right.
to me, I want to finish them as close as possible and give them the best hunt and treat them just like they're a buddy that hunts with us every single weekend. So when they leave, it ain't just about the pile. Like, the smile is more important, like seeing the bond with friends and family that come in to hunt. Then you start to form that relationship with them, and you look forward. So every weekend I got a new set of group that I'm now starting to hunt with every single year. So you kind of look forward to their weekend when they come into town, and
Right.
entertaining them and showing them what it's like to hunt in Missouri.
And then there's the deer hunting side. You have a rifle season.
Yes, we started that last year. Took me 3 years to get to the point. I wanted to hunt the farms. I wanted to figure out how the deer moved. I didn't want to put my name on it unless I knew I could deliver the goods and deliver the expectation and charge what I wanted to charge for it, and make sure they had a good time. The biggest thing, my biggest fear is letting people down. So to have somebody come pay me money and trust that I'm going to put them on a deer, like, you're dealing with the wild. So the only thing I can control is the experience. But if I do my research and understand what's going on these farms, I'm going to give them the best opportunity. So last year we rolled into it, had great success. They rebooked for this year. We offered just a few hunts with it. So it's nice to have the same group of guys come back and coming back this year, because now I got the expectation. I know what these guys are going to be like in camp. I know what kind of fun we're going to have. I know what kind of stories we've already created.
Yeah.
Got invited to go down to their place in March and hunt turkeys in Florida, and total different ball game from what I'm hunting up here in the Easterns. And
Oh, sure.
it was great to start to build that kind of relationship. And that's what's so fun about doing the outfitting side of it. To me, it's not about the money. Like, to me, it's the experiences and creating the relationships and forming bonds with people that don't know how to hunt or don't know how to do it the way when you take it to that next level, and like what the opportunities and how birds respond, or the deer when you put the time in and that's your main focus. So it's rewarding to see and to get that congratulations, or to like, man, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, that feedback is what keeps me doing it.
You bet. Are you full for this coming deer season?
Waterfowl, we went to doing 2 groups on the weekends, so I have a few weekends left. We're still going to just run a group during the week, and then on the weekends probably do run 2. So
That's on the goose side. What about the deer side?
Deer, I have no vacancies. Like,
You're full.
Completely full. We have
Wow.
10 guys coming in for 5 days, and that's all. I just, with the resource, I don't want to abuse my resource. I know what the farms are capable and what we're able to harvest off of it, and still sustain a good deer herd to where we're not mismanaging our source.
Right. What about turkey? Is that in the future?
Turkey's my baby. That's where I like to just have fun. After hunting season, the turkey season's kind of like relaxing.
I also know that Nate likes to make money too. So if the price is right, you might be able to get Nate to take you on a really awesome Missouri turkey hunt.
It is, but it's just, Missouri is the way that our game laws are with turkey season. It just makes it tough. And I don't, like I said, I don't like to not meet people's expectations. And when I set that forth, it's hard to, I think, Missouri to do it consistently. So I just don't offer it. I tried it and did a few hunts to kind of test the waters, and it just, to me, doesn't, the money ain't worth it.
Gotcha.
I'd rather take buddies. Like, Q got the chance to go opening day and shoot a bird and get that monkey off his back that he hadn't done in a long time. So to me, that was just as rewarding. For us, it's fun just to go to produce the content, have fun with it, and not worry about clients for once. Like, it can get stressful every day to be worrying about that expectation, and like that stuff's very prideful for me. And I set the bar very high for myself and the guys around me to, put every effort into it you can, because that's the only thing we can control.
That's right. So then the deer hunting is already full. You got some open dates for goose hunting. If they were wanting to book a really awesome, because this isn't the belly busting type of outfit operation. Nate has not only been a great waterfowl hunter before he got involved with HW, but being a product of HW also, we are always about trying to get those birds to finish in our face, landing gear down, back flapping in the spread. And because we have to get them on camera, and that you treat it the same way for your clients.
Yep.
So if anyone listening wanted to have an amazing Missouri Canada goose hunting experience, how would they go about booking?
Reach out to my contact, either DM me or send me a message on Facebook, or my cell phone number's on there too, and shoot me over a text or give me a phone call.
Website
was down right now. We're reworking it, updating all the pictures and getting some content that needed to change from 5 years ago. It hadn't been touched, so we're trying to revamp that.
So basically just find you on social media.
Social media is the easiest, yeah.
All right. And what's your handle there?
Valley Oaks _Oaks.
Okay.
On Instagram, and then Valley Oaks Outdoors on Facebook.
Awesome. Now, Heartland Waterfowl. Why did you want to be a part of Heartland Waterfowl?
When I grew up as a kid, like, we'd go to the Blockbuster or the video store, and it was Monster Bucks. Like, so I've consumed outdoor television media before, even when it was on TNN on Saturday mornings. Like, I didn't watch cartoons. I watched hunting and fishing shows. And so it was kind of always like a dream of mine, reading North American whitetail, deer and deer hunting, turkey hunting, Missouri game fish. It was just always appealing to me. And then when that opportunity, when Huntsucker gave me a shout and said, you guys were struggling at home and needed some ground to go hunt on goose hunt, like, I didn't know. I was starstruck, man. Like, it's kind of like, holy, wow. Like, somebody's recognizing what I do and like the passion I have for it. And then we go out that day and we skunked it.
Super fan. Nate must have been a super fan.
We all were.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, you are. I mean, it's local. Like, you can connect with it, and knew some of the similar people. It's like, I'd known Nate Flynn since I was 16. So he's kind of introduced me to Mike, and then it kind of grew from there into where it's at now. And yeah, like, that opportunity, like, now you look at it and I'm like, I don't think anything of it. Like, oh, you guys do TV. I'm like, you get kind of complacent with it. It just becomes a norm.
Right.
But yeah, just going with it. Like, I thought that's where I wanted to go. And I thought, like, oh, I want to create content, learn how to film, and kind of got to the point, like, just when I started getting more involved with the show and becoming a part of the team, like, I hated not being able to hunt every day. Not that I wanted to hunt or kill, but it was the fact of just the organizing, the strategy, the game planning every single day. Like, I hate being disconnected, because it's hard to do both when you're worried about producing content for the show or you're worried about the hunt. Somebody, whatever day you're on, kind of dictates what you're thinking. So I want to think about the hunt every day.
Sure. All right. Well, hey, coming up here in just a little bit, we're going to talk to Nate a little bit more about his involvement with Heartland Waterfowl. We'll probably bring up some of his old Heartland Waterfowl stories from the days that we've been out on the road. And we're also going to dive into the early days of Nate Meyer, when he served a tour over in Iraq when he was serving on the United States Navy. That's coming up here in moments on the Papa Ron Podcast.
The Papa Ron Podcast is brought to you by the award-winning Heartland Waterfowl, airing now on Sportsman's Channel. Check heartlandwaterfowl.com for air times. The all-new Season 9 debuts in July on Sportsman's Channel. And don't forget about the new original series on the Heartland Waterfowl YouTube channel. Check it out, and don't doubt the scout. Now, back to the Papa Ron Podcast. Here's Ronnie Phillips.
Don't forget to check out the home of the Papa Ron Podcast at paparonradio.com. There you're going to find everything that is involved with this new venture of mine, because this thing is more than just a podcast, folks. I'm telling you that right here in this very studio, There's been the voiceover production. There's been commercial production, imaging, copywriting. The website is now offering MC services and recently just added to paparonradio.com radio station voice tracking. There's going to be an announcement coming up in the very near future about how the Papa Ron radio show is coming to a radio station near you somewhere in the state of Missouri. So check that out at paparonradio.com. Back with Nate Meyer, who is owner of Valley Oaks and is also involved as a team member of Heartland Waterfowl on Sportsman Channel and YouTube. So let's talk about maybe the first memory that comes to your mind. You've been doing this for the last 7-8 years now, traveling with us all over the country. I know you've been to New York, North Dakota. You've been to Alaska. We've been all over. So what's if you were to think about whether it's your favorite hunt, your favorite trip, or just a crazy experience that happened when you were on the road with us, what's the first memory that comes to mind?
The first memory that comes to my mind, it was my first trip up to North Dakota.
Okay. So that would have been season 2 probably, right?
It was season 2.
Okay.
Yeah. I just remember talking to Logan through Messenger. I helped you guys put the trailer together.
The decoy trailer
together right before you guys went to Canada. Crum had me out for that. And then knowing that I was going on the North Dakota trip, and then it was just typical Logan, vague details of like, who am I riding with? Where am I going? Trying to get that information out of him. I just remember showing up over at Logan's barn and getting in. I think you had left behind your truck and we were driving up. It was me, Chaz, Matt.
I forgot about that. That was the 2-week trip. That was the 2-week trip.
Yeah. There was guys coming back down once we got up there, and I just remember riding up with there like, what did I get myself involved in?
Because you didn't know any of these guys. You're about to go on a 12-hour ride to North Dakota on a filmed hunt for a TV show, and you're riding with a bunch of dudes you'd never met before.
No, and you know what kind of conversation is going to get brought up with Matt. Like, just like, Matt's is going to drop some A-bombs. You're like, holy cow, dude. Like, what did I get myself involved with? But just getting up, like, never being part of a production like that, and getting up there and seeing like the behind the scenes of like what really, because at that time you guys were filming the intro too. That was when we were doing the helmet.
Oh, that's right.
So you were trying
third person. We were filming in third person. We were actually strapped a Canon DSLR camera to a motorcycle helmet, and we were filming a bunch of stuff in third person. And boy, it seemed like a really great idea at the time, but oh my gosh, it took a really long time to film that intro because it was so hard to understand your depth perception when you were running a camera on the top of your head. Wow. All right. So that was probably the first thing that came to your mind as a memory. What would you say is your favorite trip that you've been on as it comes to just quality hunts where you walked away from that going, man, that was surreal?
I don't know if I have a favorite hunt. Like, they all have their moments. They all have something that happened during it, whether it's something we overcame or situation, whether it be the hunting or just the environment we're in.
I bet I have one for you.
What's that?
It's not necessarily the hunting as much as it was the experience. The first time we went to Alaska and we hunted up there with Bonnie, and then we went on that float plane ride across the glaciers.
The float plane trip, like when we went up and fished for silvers and shot them ptarmigan, was just seeing, like, you don't realize until you get in that plane and you're flying across Alaska how big and remote it is. Once you get up off of that lake and you get away from civilization, like,
you're in the bush.
You're in the bush. And you're not, you don't feel like you're that far away when you're in a plane. But yeah, when we landed on there and we dealt with them bugs, with those no-see-ums and hiking those mountains and shooting them ptarmigan was definitely, that was the highlight of all the trips. But I mean, even the simplest trips have their moments, so it's hard to cherish one that I would take over another.
Do you have a favorite? I think I know the answer to this, but do you have a favorite, like, if you know that you're going to, say, Wyoming, you know, we're going to hunt in a pit, we're going to be in a pit blind, and we're going to be shooting Canada geese. You know, if you go to North Dakota, there's a chance that you could get a little bit of everything. You know, if you go to Texas, you're going to shoot sandhill cranes and blue quail. Is there a particular species that you love to chase the most?
Yeah, big hungers.
Okay. Well, I mean, you do that at home.
I do. And I love my ducks. Like, don't get me wrong. Ducks get me excited, but big hongers, the way they're like a turkey, man. They don't gobble, but when they start moaning and groaning and getting with it coming in, like it's hard to beat.
They start talking dirty to you.
They do. They get nasty. And they just think the way they vocalize and the way they interact, I just like the way they work. And it's a big bird. Make a big splash. Like they just put some wind on them and they do some dirty things. Mm-hmm. But it's big honkers. I mean, ducks in the dry fields, I've never really had a good timber hunt, never really been exposed to that, so I can't really talk much about that. But dry field mallards are pretty special. It's just the consistency. Like, I know geese, and that's probably why that's what I like to chase. I like big spins on snow geese too. And
here we go.
If I had to choose one,
here we go. I'm just kidding.
That roar does get addicting. Like, yeah, I mean, it doesn't, because it doesn't happen very often. Like, I feel, to me, like shooting ducks, I don't think they're as difficult as some of the other birds. And to me, it's the challenge behind. Like, I love trying to fool them birds as close as I can. And same way I shoot turkeys. Like, if I can't get them to 5 yards, 5 feet, like it doesn't excite me. I want to know that I've done everything the best I could, and that bird has no clue what's going on.
What do you want to do next? Like, what is the thing that you haven't done that you really want to do?
I want to pursue getting more veterans and first-time hunters in the field. Like, I want to be able to start passing like what I've learned on how to hunt down to somebody else. I feel like it's just a big disconnect. Everybody talks about wanting to do it, but there's just not a lot of action taken on it. So to me, like, I know what hunting has done, like a subject we're going to get into with the PTSD. Like, if I didn't have hunting, like, I don't know where I would be. So for me to, like, if I could offer something to be able to get somebody, like, push them back off that cliff, or be able to give them something to just give them inspiration, and, or even with kids, like, there's so much things that you learn with hunting that apply to life. Like, in way we're going with just social media and just mushing our brains, like, I feel like we need that connection and like the outdoors and just being outside and putting those game plans. Like, just so many variables that you learn that apply to life that can be taken away from it. So not only teaching them something that can put food on the table, but also teaching them things that either help with their mental state or help them with the growth of their personality or their person as a self. Mm-hmm. So to me, like, that's my next big step, is being able to do something in that.
So that's not where I was going with the question, but that was a really good answer. That was a really good answer. But let's go with, like, what is a species or a type of hunt that you've never done before that you are, you would really like? For me, I really want to get on a good cinnamon teal hunt. I think that would be cool. I've never shot a cinnamon teal. That's a trophy bird for me. A lot of people, they have their bird, like a harlequin or whatever. Like, that's the golden rail. For me, it's a cinnamon teal. What is cinnamon teal, rather? What is something that you haven't done that you would like to experience?
Mallards in the timber.
Okay, like Arkansas.
Yeah.
All right.
Any flooded timber. I mean, it's just something that, growing up, like what I hunting public marshes in Missouri, hunting flooded corn and hunting flooded buckbrush, like on Truman Lake. You get pretty close to it, but like, I want to hunt in the oaks and I want to see mallards get down through. Just something I've never experienced. And even with all the places we've gone, it's just something we've never filmed. And
we have.
I wasn't a part of it, but
you weren't there, and it was not successful, and that's why it never made it never made TV. We were there at the wrong time. What about you, Q? You're sitting over there kind of quiet. What is something that you haven't had a chance yet to experience on the waterfowl hunting side? Or anything? I mean, I guess we don't need to keep it specific to waterfowl hunting. What is something that, you've got to experience a lot being out on the road, going to different places around the country to hunt waterfowl? What's something that you haven't yet been able to do that you'd really like to do?
Yeah, so I got to experience my first cranes this year.
Yeah,
so that was cool. A new one for me.
You haven't done that yet, Nate. Right?
No, it's always in January.
Oh, that's right. You got your season here. That's right.
It's the season here, so it's tough.
I don't know, man. I'm still I like big game, with the deer hunting, whatnot like that. So I really, bucket list is an elk for sure. But waterfowl wise, I'm kind of with Nate. I've never, with all what we did this last year, I think the timber hunt would be a good one. It's always been, I've always seen it, obviously, but I want to experience it. As close as I've gotten is I went to Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee. Oh. That was pretty cool. So I guess I kind of have, but it was in a pit. And they came in a hole, but
it's not the same.
It's not the same, right?
You know, hugging a cypress tree.
I want the full experience, right?
Right. All right. Well, you brought up PTSD, and I want to get into that in just a bit. Before we do, though, let's go back to your youth and what inspired you to join the U.S. Navy.
I joined the Navy. I kind of got in a situation like when I dropped out of high school.
How old were you when you joined the Navy?
I was 20.
Okay.
So
and you said you dropped out of high school.
Yeah, I dropped out at 17, tried to go back my senior year. Tried to take remedial classes to graduate with all my buddies. And they put me in some classes that I didn't belong in. Like, I'm not an idiot. And they would put me in a functional math class and they would expect me like get done with the homework in 10 minutes and everybody else is struggling. And what am I going to do? Like, I'm Nate. I goof off. Like, I'm going to cause a scene when I'm distracted. And so I got to the point that they would send me down to the office to do my homework and then I had a meeting with the counselor. And at the time, my mom was a counselor for Rediscover and Lee Summit doing mental health social work. And the counselor at school told me that she wasn't worried about me. She was more worried about her kids that were going to go to college. And that hit me hard. That really, why am I putting all this effort in?
She felt like you were a waste of her time.
Waste of her time. Like, what I was doing and what I was trying to do didn't matter. And I'm like, why did she, if she doesn't care, why do I care? And I told my mother that, and she was like, Nate, you can do whatever you want. It didn't sit well with her, even with her background. And it was a tough situation. And so I didn't. And the hardest thing I ever did was watch all my peers and friends and my cousin's the same age as me and watching him graduate and not having a graduation party and just going and attending all these things. And man, it was a blow to my self-esteem, self-worth. I mean, granted, I had fun the off, when everybody was at school, I duck hunted 42 days at Grand Pass. I shot a lot of mallards. I learned a lot about hunting, and I hunted a lot of deer during that time. And, that was what kept me sane. And so, right after everybody graduated, I got my GED, scored high enough, got in, started community college with everybody else, and picked back up where everybody else was at. And I was still making bad choices.
So that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, my parents, I made a few wrong choices. My parents just kind of were starting to shut me off. And you need to grow up, man. You're 18, 19 years old. You need to man up. And I was working with my dad and learned how to frame houses and in the trades. And construction workers aren't the best influences sometimes, especially if you're on a framing crew. You're not dealing with bright minds and you're dealing with hard workers. They show up every day, but not the guy that you want to mold your son. And I had a buddy come back and he was talking about being in the Army and being in boot camp and how cool it was. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go talk to a recruiter. And I had, at that time, I'd known about the CBs because I wanted to be in construction. I wanted to be a home builder. That was always my dream. I wanted to build houses. I love the whole aspect of again, putting together a process. And so I researched everything and seen what the Navy CBs offered. And I went in, I knew they had a 2-year program. 2 years qualified me for the full GI Bill. I could go to college, get a degree in construction management, come out and start building houses or go to work for somebody. And so I joined, and my parents had no idea. They had no idea I went to a detailer. They had no idea I went to MEPS. And I came home and I slapped it on the paperwork and said, I leave in August. Friends, nobody knew what I was up to. And I done it all behind it. And it's probably the best decision that I ever made that kept me straight. I was starting to go down a wrong path with bad habits, and I was making poor choices, and that kind of shaped me up. All right, now I got to straighten my stuff out where we're going to go. And still remember this day getting off a yellow school bus up in Chicago to boot camp, and those RDCs just getting into my ass. I about cried. I want my mom back, man. Send me home. What did I do? I can't get out of this contract. It was the first time in my life I couldn't back out of something. I had to fulfill I had to fulfill what I had signed up to do, and there was no going back. And I remember a lot writing letters to my grandma and writing letters to my dad. Like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, this sucks. Mm-hmm. And that was like the first 7-8 weeks. And then you start to, like, the way the military works, I mean, they break you down. Like, they start you fresh. And the first 3 weeks is nothing but a breakdown process. You're nothing but a number, and you feel that way. And then as you go through, you don't know this when you're there. Like, you're under so many other stressors, and as they slowly start to build you back up, and then you get to the end where you go through your last week and you graduate, like, I mean, you walk around proud. And then I remember my grandmother said, I've never seen you walk so straight, and never seen you walk so proud. Like,
wow. That's cool.
With it. So like, it kind of, it gave me that inspiration again. Like, oh man, I can do something. Like, I'm not what the statistic of a high school dropout is going to be. Like, there is potential. And after graduating boot camp and going through that and seeing how proud, like, my family and my friends were of, like, it was the first time I'd felt that sense of purpose and, like, all right, you're doing the right thing. You know, it was like people are talking good things about you, not negative attached to it. So that gave me a lot of inspiration. So then I go into what we could in the Navy call A school, which is where you start to learn your trade. And me being in construction since as young as I was, like, it was the stuff they were teaching, like, I already knew how to do, and I ended up honor graduating out of it, being the top graduate. And they had a program at the time called Turbo Crow, and they automatically push you to E4, but you got assigned a year extension, and you have to be in battalion for 4 months before they will offer you the extension, and then they have up to a year to give it to you. And got into battalion after that. Like, they had told me, I got attached to the right people that taught me. Like, I went in, I did the work, became a company clerk, so I got involved with all the officers and all the senior enlisted, went on the right track, got in front of the right people, so I didn't have things to worry about. I basically kissed the right butt. And
sure,
it wasn't just for myself, but that's what they said. Like, if you want to make yourself a name in here, this is what you got to do. And I was like, all right, I'll put the work in. So I sat there while everybody else is off at the beach or doing whatever they want to do at 19, 20 years old.
Chasing tail.
Yeah. I'm in the office running their leave chits and processing all their paperwork so they can go have fun at home or keeping attendance and making sure kids are at their classes that they need to be. Like, did that. And then, so that went on for like 3 or 4 months. And then it got to the time we're getting close to our field exercise where we're getting ready to deploy to go to Iraq. And there's an NDOT class, because when you hit E4, you become a petty officer in 3rd class. And so I was waiting for them to do my NDOT class. Like, hey, like, I'm ready for this pay, because it's a significant pay raise from E3 to E4. You finally start to, and you get more privileges. You can live off base, and a lot more comes with it. And I'm like, when am I going to go through my NDOC? When am I going to go through my NDOC? Well, we need you to go to this communications class. So they put me through a communications class and come back. And I was supposed to go to Afghanistan. I was talking to the chief that was going to take me up there. And I was like, well, when are you guys going to frock me? When are you going to put my E4 on and go through my NDOC? And they're like, oh, we're working on it. And he's like, but we need you to sign your extension. I said, I'm not signing my extension until you give me my pay. Like, yeah, you guys have waited around. I've already lost 3 months of pay now. Now I'm 7 months in past this. And I was like, man, I'm leaning really towards, you know what? Now I'm only a year out from getting out, and like, I'm leaning hard towards college. And he looked at me straight in the eye and called me a quitter. Oh. And that stung. Like, I was like, why am I a quitter? Because I want to go to college and better myself. Yeah. And get out of, like, now, like, I'm starting to see with the military, your guys that are shit hot, like, if they don't have a family and nothing to tie them in, like, they get their first contract and they're out. And it seemed like the guys that in the Bs were the guys that were 18, 20 years in, like, had obligations that kept them in. Whether A, they couldn't make it in society, or B, like, they had families that they couldn't gamble, or they weren't ready to take the risk. They weren't risk takers. And I was ready, like, I got my purpose out of it, got my free college. Like, now I don't have anything to worry about. Get out. And he pulled me from Afghanistan. He's like, man, I ain't taking you to Afghanistan. You're going to go main body to Guam. I'm like,
you're going to what?
Main body to Guam. The rest of the battalion was going to Guam at that time. And Guam's Guam. Like, I not want to go to Guam. So I had a first class come up to me that I had a good relationship with, and he was a big hunter. And he's like, hey, you can come to Hawaii with me. I was like, Hawaii? I was like, I'm gonna go broke. I'm gonna go to college once I get out. Like, I don't want to go to college with a bunch of credit card debt. Like,
sure,
I know what the cost of living in Hawaii is. Like, no way. And then I had another first class come in, and he's like, man, I got an opening to go on to Iraq. He's like, would you want to go? I was like, yeah, sign me up for it. So that's best and worst decision. I mean, there's some drawbacks to going over there, but it was definitely a moment where, like, yeah, I want the hazard duty pay, I want the combat pay, I want the experience, I want to be able to come back and then go to school. Like, the heck with the signing the year extension. Like, now I'm down to less than a year. Like, I'm not going to sign your year extension. And so go to Iraq, we go to field exercise, did a month and at Camp Shelby in Mississippi, and end of July, August, terrible in the woods, swamp, middle of the summer. I would take Iraq over Camp Shelby in the summer. It was that bad with the humidity and just nastiness of the sweat. But so we did that, and then we deployed end of September to Iraq. And I remember, like, we partied pretty hard the night before because they kicked us out of the barracks, had to have everything moved out. So, of course, the local casino in Gulfport, Mississippi, they pick you up on base for free and take you to the casino because they want your money. And I just remember being there and getting pretty loaded, and I was showing up, going on lockdown, and getting on that airplane. It's like, when you get on a commercial aircraft with an M16 between your legs, that's when it starts to feel a little real. And then we flew 29 hours, and we get there, and you land in Iraq, and it was in the afternoon. I remember just looking out the windows going, what did I just get myself into? Like,
okay, stop right there. We're going to get into Iraq in just a second. I want to ask one more question before we go to break. Why did you drop out of high school? I mean, you talked about the bad choices, right? Like, but what, like, let's get beneath the surface here. Was it that your parents just didn't really they didn't have any authority over you, that maybe they just let you do whatever you wanted? And I don't know the answer to this. I'm genuinely asking. You know, did you not have any structure? Did you just, the friends that you run around with were just a bunch of dirtbags that kind of led you down the wrong path? I mean, what ultimately led the Nate Meyer that I know to be a guy to drop out of high school and then have to go through all of these roller coaster of events before he ended up joining the military?
I like to do shit the hard way.
Okay. And there's a lot of people that do that. That's all right.
Man, like, school didn't challenge me. Like, if I'm not challenged and I'm
So you're saying you were an A student, that you
if I applied myself, yeah.
Okay.
Right. My parents, I was blessed with great parents. I mean, did they enable some of my actions? Of course they did. Their parents.
So what were the actions? You've talked about making bad choices. What were these choices? What was the shit you did that took you down the wrong path?
I made with the poor choices of, I liked, and
you like to party?
I like to party, and the stimulants. Like, I was a social butterfly, and I thrive off of atmosphere and groups and being a part of that. But it's been so long, like, I don't even really know what the triggers were that made me drop out, besides it just got to the point where I was bored with it. And I would do the work and then it was done. It had nothing to do with the parenting. It had nothing to do with opportunity. My parents were always lax with me, and they let me get away with it. But I mean, that's the stuff I learned that I carry with me today. So I don't know if that's a negative, but
yeah,
just making poor choices was the biggest thing, and kind of not really understanding where those consequences are going to get me at the end of the day. Everybody tells you, but I'm the kind of guy that's got to live it. Like, if I don't live it and experience it, I mean, you can tell me something all day long, but I'm still going to try it. Maybe you didn't do it the right way. Like, that's always the way I always have been. Don't tell me I can't do something.
So Nate Meyer grew up as the guy who just liked to have a good time. School was boring to him. He just liked to hunt a lot, be with his friends. And then, just ended up tripping along the way with bad choices left and right, to where it really kind of put you in a position that the military was, how should I say this? The military offered you more options than life was already offering you.
They offered me the structure and the discipline.
But did you go into the military seeking were you were 19, 20 years old, like you hadn't had this structure before. Were you like sitting here going, there's something missing in my life. I need structure. Where can I get it? Oh, I'll join the military.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like, I did not think that at the time. I mean, that's definitely a thought that like that purpose came figuring it out. Like when I decided it wasn't for the structure, I just wanted change. I wanted out of the environment I was in, and the environment I was in at the time, yes, it was healthy. Like I had a great group of friends, and they're still a good group of high school buddies that we still get together. But it was, and my parents great at molding me, and it was the discipline side of things. Like I knew how to manipulate them. I was very good at manipulating, and I knew how to get what I wanted. And I needed, like, at the time, I didn't realize it, but I needed structure. Like, I didn't have this structure. They kind of just let me go with it and thinking that was going to work itself out. But, yeah, like, without the structure of the military, I don't think I'd stay where I'm at now.
Gotcha.
Or have the ethic that I have to drive.
I understand. Well, you brought up Iraq, and you brought up a lot of the things that, you were getting ready to get into a lot of the things that happened when you were in Iraq, and ultimately how the PTSD came from that. So Nate and I have connected on a level like we've never connected before in the last few months, and we're going to dive into all that raw emotion coming up next on the Papa Ron Podcast.
The Papa Ron Podcast is brought to you by Dumar Solutions. Dumar Solutions, offering affordable chemical and PPE solutions for any industry. Automotive, industrial, manufacturing, concrete, and asphalt construction. Also offering kitchen cleaners, corrosion control, and specialty coatings. Detergents, cleaners and degreasers, laundry care, floor care, odor control, personal hygiene, and much more. Do more with Dumar. Inquire with any of your needs at DumarSolutions.com. That's DOMARE Solutions.com. Now back to the Papa Ron Podcast. Here's Ronnie Phillips.
As mentioned earlier, don't forget to follow the Papa Ron Podcast on all your favorite social platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. There you can find about upcoming guests and show topics here on the Papa Ron Podcast, because I'm telling you, this is not just about mental health. This is not just about hunting and fishing. It's about a little bit of this, a little bit about that. But here's what I will tell you about what the Papa Ron Podcast will be. It's going to be fun and interactive, but it's going to be talking about real life shit. All right. That's the best way I can put it. It's like we're going to talk about real life stuff that's maybe uncomfortable to talk about, because frankly, I feel like that, especially in my situation, internalizing it is the biggest. It's the biggest thing that can destroy you. So we're going to get beneath the surface, and that's where we're going to start now with Nate Meyer, who's our guest. He's also a part of Heartland Waterfowl. He's the owner of Valley Oaks, the outfitting operation. We'll put you on some incredible Missouri goose hunts, also some firearm deer hunts if the spots are available. So you joined the U.S. Navy, you've gone through boot camp, you've got some structure now, you're kind of working your way up to the ranks, and you're kind of finding your groove, you're finding your value, and you're trying to figure out how now you can continue to advance as you're being challenged to renew your contract. And now you have the chance to go to Iraq, you can get that extra combat pay and all of the things that you mentioned earlier. Did you really know what you were getting yourself into? Because I would think that in the time that you had already served, you had come across some people who had already done tours in Iraq, and you'd probably heard some stories. So were you prepared to be in Iraq?
I mean, prior to 2004, like the invasion into Iraq wasn't the combat, and like the insurgency wasn't where it was getting ready to go. So like when I had talked to guys that were on the initial push going in for my battalion that had been there before me, like this, it was a cakewalk. Like, oh, it's gravy. Like, you just got to be away from home and without some liberties and some comforts that you're used to at home. I was like, all right, like I can do this. Like no different than being on a long hunting trip, I guess. Like,
so you didn't know?
No, I had no idea what I was getting into.
Okay, so you were getting ready to talk about it, and then I cut you off. You landed in
Kuwait.
Kuwait? Okay.
Yeah. Ali Al Salim in Kuwait. We had a CB base that was just off from an Air Force base there, Camp Morrell. And we mobilized out of there. We flew into Baghdad, and then we flew into Balad. And from Balad, I started in Taji.
Did you know what your mission was going to be once you got there?
No. I mean,
So
we're a low man on the totem pole. Like, we're just delegated at that point. You're just peon. You're as a need-to-know basis at that point.
So what happens first? I mean, just giving me the meat and potatoes. You get there, you fly in. You're at your camp where you're supposed to be. What happens?
We started we were at Taji. We were supposed to set up a spec ops base that could operate.
A what?
Spec ops. Like, we were an outpost on Taji. Was a 50 square mile camp. It was where Saddam kept his tanks battalions operated out of. So we were there it was a pretty good sized camp, and we were like right on the edge of the Sunni Triangle, and the Fallujah offensive was going on. And so we were there to set up an outpost for them, and we were remodeling some buildings and pouring concrete for a helicopter pad, and we did that for about 2 months, and then it was just kind of transition. That side of it, like, I have a hard time talking about there. Like, to me, it was more like what triggered like my downfall after getting out was once I got out of the service was the purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't so much like the trauma or being over there and seeing what I saw or doing what I did or being away from my family. I mean, yeah, that was part of the process, but once I got out and hit the civilian world, because when I got back, I only had 4 months in. My senior chief at the time for the battalion was going to ops senior chief at the regiment. He seen me shoot. He put me on as a range coach at Woolmarket, which was the shooting range where everybody in battalion had to go to qualify before they could go to battalion. You had to qualify on all your weapons before you could hit battalion. So he's like, hey, perfect fit. Like, you got 4 months left. Like, this is a gravy train for you. Just show up and go. And so I did that, detached from my regiment, or from the battalion, joined the regiment on temporary duty status, and then get out. And once I got out, like, I was angry when I came back, and I didn't know why I was angry. Like, we got into fisticuffs at the bars at night whenever we'd go out, and somebody was always stirring something up. I was quick-tempered.
And this was the minute you got back, or did it take a little bit of time for the uncertainty of knowing who you were, what your identity was being a civilian?
It was first night back, I got into it with my brother. Like, I don't even remember what it was about. I remember kind of what bar we were at, because I remember we were eating dinner. The restaurant owner brought over, found out I just came back from Iraq, bought us all tequila shots, and started getting preloaded. And then, like, I remember getting into it with my brother that night. And then we went down. We spent one night in Gulfport. Then we went down to New Orleans for a couple of days. And I remember getting in an altercation on Bourbon Street. Like, yeah, like, when I came back, I loved to fight. Like, I was angry. I don't know what I was angry about. Like, at that time, you're so young. I was 22, 23. You just had a chip on my shoulder. Like, I felt I was above the law. And that's when I really started to spiral and digress. Even though I was at the top of my game, like, inside I wasn't. Like, I got out, like, I was getting out. And then once I hit college, like, trying to figure out, everybody was proud of you whenever you were in the service, and you kind of, like, lose that. Everybody looks at you different when you got back out. Like, well, they got a quitter. So I kind of, like, took, like, that same stigmatism of what I felt when I dropped out of high school. It kind of felt like, since I didn't continue my military career, that I was a dropout out of the military. Like, this started to stick with me, and I just felt like I wasn't good enough anymore. Like, people looked at me different. And then I had a bad drinking problem. I partied all the time. I guess the only way I could cope with it. I didn't know how to handle those stressors. I didn't know what was triggering me to feel the way I was feeling. And that went on for a long, long time. I mean, 10, 12 years. And like I got into trouble with drinking and driving, and that finally, like, the last time I got popped, like, it sunk home. Like, next time I'm going to prison. Like, next time there is no getting out of it. Like, now you got to be smart about it. And that was really like, it was a wake up call that had issues. But I always just learned to compartmentalize them. I kind of learned to just go about, put a smile on my face, carry on about my day, and just keep that stuff inside and like handle it when I got home alone. And I did that for a long time, and it was miserable. Like, everybody else thought I was happy. Everybody else thought everything's great. On the outside, it looks good, but inside, you're just dealing with pain, and like, you don't know how to express it. Like, as society, the way we teach men, like, especially coming from like a warrior status of being a military, I mean, you're supposed to be tough. Like, they don't teach you how to handle those emotions. Like, I mean, everybody gives women shit for being emotional. We're just as emotional as women. We just don't know how to express it. We just keep it in because it's looked at differently. That if I tell you, well, I'm sensitive, so you can't say things around me. No, it's not that I'm sensitive, man. Like, shit hits different. And at times it's like I struggled with that. I didn't know how to express myself. I didn't know how to tell people, I'm like, I'm struggling. How do I reach out for help? And you kind of do when you hit episodes. Like, you'll hit really bad stretches where you think you reach out to somebody and you talk to them about it, and you'll feel good for a few weeks, and then you're right back into that hole. And I went on for that for a long time. And finally, I mean, it hasn't been HW. When I started getting involved with HW, really started to give me a little clearer path, because I got that small unit feeling back that I got in the military. The strategy behind putting the hunts together, the strategy behind how the brotherhood, like the camaraderie. I mean, the road trips. I mean, how many hours have me and you spent in a truck together?
Lots.
Like, how many in-depth conversations have you and I had? Like, I spent more time in the truck with you than I have anybody else on the team. And like, those 2-3 o'clock in the morning, like, keep you awake conversations. Like, we've had some pretty in-depth conversations, and we've had some very rough patches. I mean, we've had to have a couple sit downs to like, hey,
well, we weren't going to have sit downs. We were going to have knockout, drag out fights. So it was necessary to have those sit downs. But yeah, I know what you mean.
But I actually, like, looking back, I took a lot back away from that, because it taught me how to communicate effectively. That taught me that, you know what, I can have a conversation with you, speak what I want to speak, and do it in a way that I don't have to worry about offending you, because you might understand what I'm saying. And then I can rebuttal back with what you're saying. Like, why are you acting the way you're doing it? What's your thought process behind it? So that kind of woke me up on a lot of it. I remember one time at that taco joint, after we came back from Manhattan, like, I was ready to be done with it all. And if it wasn't for that conversation and feeling the sensation, like, heartfelt that I felt from you, like, I was ready to be done with it.
Yeah. But see, and internalizing that would have ultimately led to a bad choice.
Yeah. And we've seen it happen with others. Like, internalizing things is not good. And that's where, as men, we have got to get better at, you know what? It's okay to talk about it. Like, it's okay. Like, I don't really care what you think of me if I'm going to talk about my emotions. And it took me a long time to get to that point. And like, over the last 2 years, it's been like a main focus of where I'm putting my energy in my life, is like understanding myself and understanding that, you know, it's okay to speak about what you're uncomfortable to speak about. Because if you don't and you compartmentalize it, all it does is, it's like cancer, man. It just spreads, and it starts to spread into mental health. It starts to spread into your mindset and like your gratitude and your humility, like what you feel. Like, it affects you. It is dangerous, and you have to be able to learn how to find the right tools. I mean, there's so many tools out there and so many ways to figure out how to handle those stressors and the depression, the trauma, the PTSD, whatever it is. Even if it's just daily life, we all struggle with things that we need to be better communicating on emotion. But why don't we? Like, what took you so long to be able to have that conversation with us that January morning? A breaking point.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to hit a breaking point. We should be able to be comfortable enough with our own skin, comfortable enough with the people that we love and that are surrounded by us, that they believe in us enough that if I tell them something, I shouldn't have to be worried about what they're going to think about me. And that's what I hid. I hid from it from a long time. Just put a smile on, do the best at what I know I'm good at, and hide what I suck at.
Yep.
And what I sucked at was expressing what internally I felt.
Yep. No, I understand that. I want to go back though a little bit because I have to. So you're telling me then how in the entire time that you were in Iraq and all the shit that you saw, that there was nothing significant there. There was no substance there that contributed to your PTSD.
No, because that trauma was expected. You know, you're getting into shit when you go to Iraq.
But I just asked you earlier, had you talked to anybody knowing what you were going to get into and you didn't really know what you were getting into? So what surprised you? Let me ask that. Let me rephrase the question. You didn't know what you were getting into. You knew you were going to war and people were going to die, right? So, I mean, that's kind of the given. But what was the first thing while you were there that made you go, whoa, now I wasn't expecting that, or I wasn't expecting to react to that. Yeah, I wasn't ready for it. Was there anything you weren't ready for emotionally?
Emotionally, yeah, it's losing everything that you take for granted living in the United States, whether it's having internet, whether it's being able to see your loved ones every day, whether it's just being able to communicate with people that in your group. Like, that was the biggest thing. Like, knowing you're going to war, you know you're going to war. Like, you're prepared for that. You know when you're getting ready to leave. It's not like, oh, you get a phone call the next day and you're leaving for Iraq. Like, I was able to prepare myself knowing I was.
No, they're training you for that, ultimately.
That side of it didn't bother me. What sucks when you're over there is, again, losing the things that you take for granted here. And like, the only way I guess you could relate it would be like getting in trouble and going to jail. I don't know. Like, when you lose those things that you take for granted every single day, like, oh, I want to go to McDonald's. Like, you just can't just go to McDonald's when you lost some freedoms. When you lose the freedoms that we're fighting for.
Yeah.
And the freedoms that we take for granted every single day. And that was the hardest thing to deal with over there. Not being able to kiss your loved ones, or not being able to see your parents when you're in the shit and like having a bad day and like get that comfort. You're 14-hour difference on time zone. So like you're trying to call them and dealing with a 3-second lag when you're coughing to them. That's a hard conversation to have until they get used to it. Like, it was losing the freedoms. Like, that was a hard thing to understand when you're over there. That was the hardest thing for me. Like, the combat, seeing the shit or the mortars and everything else going on, like, that was just part of it. Like, you become complacent to it. You hear the sirens go off and you're just like, yeah, whatever. Or hear the gunshots. It's just, it becomes a job. I mean, it's no different than like what I was seeing with being on HW. Like, oh yeah, you do a TV show? Yeah, I've been doing it for a long time. Like, kind of just get used to it. And it's crazy. And I think that's how those people live in those societies, is like, that becomes the norm. Like, you're a product of your environment. And like, if those are the things that you're exposed to every single day, like, it just becomes the point where it's acceptable. You just eventually just accept it.
Were you diagnosed with PTSD?
Through the VA, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think you have PTSD?
Yeah. I mean, I suffer from severe depression. And
so people like, they generally know the overall term of what PTSD is. What is your definition of PTSD as it relates to you?
For me, it's handling the unexpected trauma that you've handled in life. It's things that you weren't prepared to handle. And for me, it was like the sense of purpose, like the sense of disconnect and like respect when I got out. Like, I had like not being able to love myself is what the trauma I suffer from. Like, dropping out of high school preluded into like joining the service, and then coming out of that, like, you lose that satisfaction, like people respecting you, like, and that's what I feed off. Like, and now I'm starting to come to the terms where like, I don't need people's feedback to be happy in myself. Like, I need to be happy with myself. Everybody else will be happy with me after that. I just quit worrying. I was always worried about pleasing everybody else and doing everything for everybody else. And I was never worried about what Nate Meyer wanted.
Yeah.
I was doing what was socially the norm at the time and trying to fulfill obligations that people expected of me. It's not what I wanted. Like, I was just doing it because I thought that's what I thought people wanted. And it wasn't healthy. And like, the biggest thing was self-worth, like getting out and not having the respect. Like, you walk proud. Like, when I came back from Iraq, like, you couldn't take that pride from me because I know what I'd done. But once you like get thrown back into civilian world and nobody knows who you are, like that pride's gone. Like, what do you got to be prideful about? You know what you did, but you don't know, they don't know. Like, so it's hard to, as a veteran, like most guys don't talk about it. Like, I'm not going to tell you like, oh, I'm a veteran. Like, no, man, like I'm not going to ask for a veteran discount.
Yeah,
like,
they're more humble.
They're humble about where they came from. I know what I've done. Like, I know what needs to, like the changes that need to happen, but it took a long time to figure out like that path that I wanted to go on. And it wasn't until the last year has been like having my daughter and starting to like rethink like what I think of life and like where I need to go and starting to form that bond with her and like seeing her and like, man, like that's a fresh canvas. Like all these lessons in life, faults that I've had and mistakes I've made, like I have a chance to like pass that on to her and like inspire her to do what and grow up to be somebody that impacts people's lives. Like, cause that's to me is the most important thing. Like I love seeing the impact I can leave on somebody else. Like I don't care about the wealth. I don't care about the fame. Like I want to see change. Like there's change. Like our moral fabric is being eroded every single day. And we're just not paying attention. We're so consumed by so many other things because they're distracting us. And at the end of the day, like we're not focused on like what our core American values are. And that scares the shit out of me. Like, it makes all the time, like it doesn't matter how many wars we fight. Like if we don't wake up as a society and start looking around and get off of social media and scrolling and like start paying attention to our surroundings, like we're going to lose it. We're going to lose what we truly believe in as a country, and we're just going to fight back and forth, and that sucks. So we're going to take a quick break here in just a second, but would you say that you're how old? How old are you now? 39. And you got back, let's see. You were in Iraq. You went into the Navy around 1920. 1920?
19 or 20 years of age.
Oh, 19, okay.
1920. Yes.
1920, like, I'm not as old as you, Ronnie. Like,
no, I know. So what I'm basically getting to is you've been internalizing a lot of this stuff for many years, and it hasn't been until just recently that you've really started working on it, right?
Correct.
Yeah. All right, that's what we're going to get into next. All right. So Nate was a big reason of why, along with Dakota and Q, that I started this podcast, because it was that morning that I was hunting with them and I was all torn up inside and I was faking it until I could make it. And I just realized I needed to open up and share what was going on. It wasn't long after that Nate and I really started talking on a more emotional, raw level. And we're going to get into that and how that's really affected both of our lives and our friendship. It's coming up next on the Papa Ron Podcast.
You're listening to the Papa Ron Podcast. Keep up to date on new podcasts, new discussion topics, and future casts. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Search Papa Ron Podcast and be sure to like and leave a comment. Now, back to the show. Here again is your host, Ronnie Phillips.
All right, next week on the show, I'm going to have an old friend also on the show who has also been going through some things that is similar to what I have gone through over the last several months. His name is Joe Purpura. Can you believe that? Joe Purpura from Midwest Land Group, our boy Joey, is going to join me on the show. The guy has got a story that I feel like is very similar to mine, but it's his story. And he is actually in the process of starting his podcast, and he was in the process of doing that before he even knew I had a podcast. So it'll be real interesting to hear what he has to say. We're back with Nate Meyer, and of course, my boy Q from Marathon Media Management is in studio with me as well. He's the most well-behaved co-host of any podcast you're ever going to find. He just sits there and he just listens. And if you ever want to interrupt and ask questions, I'm not. I didn't tell you to sit there to be quiet.
Hey,
right?
You know me. I only speak when
spoken upon. All right. Well, I'm telling you, if you got a question for Nate, go for it. All right. Because we're all friends here, and we're all just trying to get to the root of what Nate's been going through and be a friend for him and get a message out there that, look, this is dangerous for people, especially men who are internalizing emotion. So Nate and I, like we just spoke about earlier, we've had kind of a roller coaster, love-hate relationship, if you will, over the last 7 years. Always been friends and always enjoyed each other's company. We always ride in my truck together, so we've always had some really good conversations. But we're also type A personalities who are stubborn and and when you're on a lack of sleep, there's times where you can butt heads
just a bit.
So we've definitely had our rough patches in this time that we've been friends and connected to Heartland Waterfowl. But I will say this: it was on that January morning, late January morning, because it was, I think, right after I got back from SHOT Show, because I had the panic attack. Right?
Yeah, it was last week of January.
Yeah. And we were hunting out by Lone Jack, and I talk about this in the first episode of the Papa Ron podcast. But I finally, after being diagnosed with depression, it was just Q and Dakota and Nate and I, and we were sitting out there next to a farm pond in the middle of nowhere. And it was raining. We're waiting for the birds to fly. And I just felt it weighing on my heart that I had to open up and I needed to share what was going on. And I will tell you, Nate, I don't know if I've told you this, but I'll tell you this now. I felt pretty comfortable talking to Q, and I felt pretty comfortable telling Dakota. And it's not that I wasn't comfortable telling you, but I was probably more worried about the judgment from you than I was anybody else.
Imagine that.
Because for a couple different reasons. One, you're a big smart ass. Let's start with that, right? Like, you like to dish a lot of shit. You like know what people's hot buttons are, and you like to push them to the limit to where you're going to get them to react. But I know that you mean that in good nature and all in good fun. And I knew that you were this military guy who had seen all of this stuff and had experienced all this stuff. And so part of the problem that I was experiencing is, why would I tell Nate Meyer, who served on the United States Navy, served a tour in Iraq, has seen more and been through more worse crap than I will ever imagine in my life. How is he going to understand where it is that I'm coming from?
Right.
But we were all there. And I got to the point where I didn't care. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I put it all out there. Mm-hmm. And I'll be damned if Nate Meyer, not that you guys weren't, because you all are equally as involved and compassionate and have empathy, but Nate exceeded my expectations for the level of concern and compassion and love and empathy that I had for him. And it was from there on that Nate and I were talking regularly. Mm-hmm. We were texting more regularly, and it wasn't like, "Hey, what's up?" Or it wasn't to give each other shit, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It was more to it was genuinely to say, "Hey man, I'm worried about you. I'm checking on you. If you need anything, you let me know."
Right.
And I remember being on the phone with you and you telling me after you get off the phone, and it was like, "Hey bro, I love you. And if you need anything, let me know." And I was like, man, those are words and those are feelings and emotions I've never heard from Nate Meyer. And as we get going on in this process a little bit, and I'm telling about my struggles, I'm getting to know a little bit more about Nate. I'm getting to know about Nate's struggles. And the thing that I learned about Nate was that he did have this PTSD. He did really struggle. We had the thing in common where we internalized and we struggled with knowing how to communicate it. And finally we both had someone that we could, we had each other that we could talk about this. And then from there, it led to going to a PTSD retreat. Mm-hmm. From there, it was going to therapy. It was doing the little things and finding the tools that you needed to use or to pull from your toolbox when you had those triggers. So let's go back to that January morning. And I'm not trying to say that I'm the inspiration for the reason why you are where you're at now with trying to be open about this, but it just seems like it was coincidental that it was all kind of happening about the same time. So what was it that really kind of pushed you to say, I'm done with this. I can't live like this anymore. I need help. What pushed you to make that next move?
I mean, I had tried to get help. Well, Steph and I had done couples counseling, and
so let's back up there. Stephanie is baby mama.
Yes. She is a mom to my beautiful daughter. And we had been going through some counseling, and the gentleman, Chris Kuhn, that it was our counselor, was a Navy medic on a Marine unit in Afghanistan. So he had been through some PTSD stuff, and kind of like backstory to go back to like how you felt disconnected to talk to me because I was a veteran. Like I feel the same way talking about my PTSD and why I hid it for so long was like, I didn't see the shit that some other people seen in the service. So I felt like, why am I feeling this way when these people went through all these adversities and overcame so much worse than what I did? So I felt like I'm just a bitch. Like,
yeah.
I fucking like,
y'all
did way worse than I did. And I'm over here like, don't know how to deal with my emotions. How are you doing it? But it just kind of comes to a point where like, we're all built differently internally and we're all built on different emotional capabilities. And some people can handle it. Some people can't. But going to that therapy and like, it kind of started to open my eye up, but I wasn't ready. Like I hadn't come to terms that I truly had a problem. I blame my shit on everybody else. Like it's not me. Like it can't be me. And deep down, I knew it was me, but I wasn't ready to own it. And once you owned it, gave me the inspiration. You're like, you know what?
That's
like,
I did.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like once you said something about it, it triggered something inside of me, and that was like, you know what? This guy's man enough to talk about it in front of everybody. Like, why can't I? Like, I got a reason to talk about it. Like, why am I hiding this stuff? Like, why am I not ready to be like? To me, like at that point, my daughter was almost a year old, and I've talked to you before about it. Like, I didn't feel an emotional bond with my daughter until almost that time, almost a year and a month. That like everybody's talking about this. Get separation anxiety, you miss them. And I'm like, man, I must be just cold hearted. Like, I'm not feeling this stuff. Like, everybody is like, is there something wrong with me? Like, am I emotionally screwed up? Like, I don't know. Like, I've never been a dad before. I mean, I helped raise Aiden for the last 4 years, which is Stephanie's son. That's not mine. And I tried to figure that out, but I started with him at 6. It wasn't 0. And then starting from day one, and I didn't know how to handle this stuff. I didn't know how to.
So do you attribute the internalizing of all the different crap and emotions that you had been holding in for all of those years as being the source of having the inability to have a connection with your daughter?
No, what I source myself not to be able to talk about it is being afraid to talk about it, being afraid to not like everybody says, like, I'm a smart ass, I'm strong. Like there's not much, like you can give me shit and you're not going to phase me. But
unless you kick his ass in bags. And I've done that before. And that pisses him off.
I've done it to both of you.
It doesn't mean I don't get pissed off, but I don't let emotional situations typically dictate my actions.
Okay, but what was preventing you from having the bond with your daughter?
Feeling raw emotion from her. Like when they're that young, they don't really.
Oh, okay. All right, you're talking about earlier. You said at 1 year, and I was thinking.
Well, even at a year, it still is like that's when it really started to kick in. Like that's when I started to like look at her different, like start to miss her, and like start to have those feelings towards her. That now, like, man, I want to see her every day. Like,
yeah,
and she starts to gain that cognition and like being able to like show emotion, like. That's where it really got to me. And then at the same time point, like you're having this conversation you bring up at the end of January, and like I was at a low point. Like some stuff happened in December, kind of was a blow to my ego, kind of like set me back. Like I thought I like the last year, like I was exceeding in everything, but I was doing too much, and I was doing a lot, but focused on a little. Like trying to please so many people, but what I was doing was like degrading my own health. Like mentally, like I was exhausted. I was taking it out on my family. And bless Stephanie's heart. Like I would get home and I would just shut down. I'd get on my phone. I would distract myself. I wouldn't engage in spending quality time. Like I just hated life. And it was the fact that like was doing too much. Like,
no, I get it. You get done with your day, and the last thing you want to do, you don't have the capacity for anything else after that. The minute you get home, you don't want to hear about, well, our daughter did this, and she had a blowout diaper, and here's the blowout diaper. I need you to change it. And Aiden did this, and don't forget, we've got a family dinner tomorrow night, and it says la 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 la, nah, 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 and you're just like, my head's going to explode. I don't have the capacity for this.
Yeah,
I get it. I totally get it, man. But then she doesn't understand what you're going through because you're not talking about it. And so you just look like a big total prick to her.
Yep. Yeah. You look like you don't care. You look like you don't like you're just disengaged from it. And it, like, I didn't realize what I was doing. Like, to me, like, it was just like, I couldn't take anymore. And I lost the disconnect, like the connection with her, to feel like, what's she going to think of me if I really tell her what I'm dealing with and struggling with inside? Am I going to be like, when you're the man of the house, like, you're supposed to be strong, you're supposed to carry the load, and like, they're supposed to be the one like with the emotions, and you just kind of just absorb it and just keep rolling with it and keep pushing. And I mean, we all need to be able to be comfortable to talk about. And it wasn't until I really started to lose all that and lose like, and seeing the disconnect and like understanding it and like listening to your story, and like at this point I'm like really starting to dive deep into like trying to find my self-love again, like trying to fall back in love with myself, and trying to like, what am I comfortable with doing? Like I know what I'm capable of doing, but if I'm operating at that level, like, how do I operate at that same level but love myself and not sacrifice emotionally the way I'm sacrificing now? Like, how do I handle this load all together and keep pushing forward? And like, you listen to these podcasts, you read these books, and you try to like divulge as much information as you can, but until you're ready, you ain't gonna get anywhere. That's true. Like when you admitted to me, like, you gave me the inspiration that if the hard-headed Ronnie, the guy that's always on top of the shit, the guy that's always I mean, like, I've looked up to you and Logan, like, you guys, like, I mean, I've come a long ways, like, even just being with you guys in the last 8 years. I'm not the same Nate Meyer I was 8 years ago.
No, I've told you that. You're a product of your environment. And there's so many, and I don't want to take credit for it, but I think that there's some truth to, if you surround yourself with people who are driven, who have goals, and they're committed, and they've got something that they want to accomplish, and they have the ability to accomplish it, and you get to be in that circle and see how it's done, then you're going to be a product of that environment. And, I'm not going to say that you were, a failure or a jerk off or anything like that, but you were lost. When you first came into Heartland Waterfowl, you were a little bit lost. You knew, like you said, you knew what you were capable of. You were good with the construction side of things. You had the ability to do sales, but you probably just hadn't really put yourself in a position to do it yet. And you got surrounded by a bunch of guys who, worked on that were parts of different walks of life, doing different entrepreneurial type things. And I'm sure that opened up your eyes to some of that, and to see where you are today versus where you were 7 years ago, despite all of the stuff that we're talking about on this podcast, is a huge difference. And the fact that, you're even taking that environment and recognizing, I feel uncomfortable saying it because I don't want to take any credit for it, but you felt something there by me being who I was and what I had done prior in my life, to be vulnerable, to talk about where I was at, to give you the inspiration, the level of comfort, or whatever, the strength to be able to open up about your story. And I'm glad that I was able to do that. And you know what's going to be really cool about this, because I've lived it, is that this is the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, it is.
It is. And you whether somebody that you're going to share this podcast with is going to hear this podcast, and they're not going to know anything about this part of Nate Meyer, and they're about to find out. And then they're going to go, oh shit, I did not know this about you, Nate. Yeah. Holy cow. And they're going to have a connection now with you, like you and I had a connection after I opened up. And frankly, like many other people who've listened to this podcast since I've shared my story, it's medicine, bro. I'm telling you, it's medicine. And 100%. I'm proud of you that you've opened up about it. I do want to dive into the PTSD retreat that you did, though. You got invited to do that through someone in the hunting industry, and it was kind of a crazy emotional ride for you.
It was. So it all started, Jen Ward reached out to me and said, hey, like, they are contributors to an organization called A Battle Within. I didn't know.
Battle Within.
Battle Within is the organization. And she's like, hey, would you be interested in co-hosting a hunt with Alex Gordon and Rex Hudler? And I was like, yeah, sure. Who's gonna turn that?
For those who are not baseball educated, Alex Gordon used to play. He's a Gold Glove left fielder for the Kansas City, or retired left fielder for the Kansas City Royals. Rex Hudler is the broadcast color announcer for the Kansas City Royals. Continue, Nate. How's that ice? Crunch, crunch, crunch.
Right. It's good. That means I need another whiskey.
So you got to go hunting with Alex Gordon and Rex Hudler.
Alex ended up not making it. He had obligations, and we ended up having Scott Barlow. But as we're going through the process and getting closer to the hunt, I was dealing with a gentleman named Mitch, which I still have never met. I just know his name's Mitch, but that's who my connection was to get Rex to show up on the hunt that the auction winners had won. And after the hunt, I'd reached out to him. I said, hey, like, you know, like I was seeing what kind of opportunity there is to utilize like what I'm doing in the outdoor space. I know what the outdoors has meant to me. Like he had no idea I was a veteran even going into this, because I don't talk much about being a veteran because I don't want people to like hold me that class. I'm just Nate. Like regardless of me being a veteran, like I don't want you to look at me and like put me on a different pedestal because of my service. I did my service for me and my country, not to get clout from other people. So I don't talk much about it. And so I say, hey, like, I know what hunting has done for me, and I know what the outdoors has used to help me keep a straight and narrow and not go down and make some poor choices, and kept me grounded. And he's like, yeah, so he puts me in contact with this guy named Josh Krasovec. He sends me over a test with the guy's name, and I'm like, man, I only know one Josh Krasovec. So he puts me in a group text with him and makes the introduction, and I instantly reach out to Josh separately and it's like, hey, I'm pretty sure you're the same guy that took me to high school. You were a senior and I was a freshman. When I grew up at Tapawingo, like you took me to school every single day my freshman year.
Oh, wow.
And he texted me back. He's like, holy cow. He's like, man, I haven't talked to you in 20 years.
Yeah. And
like to hear his story and then talking my story with him, he's like, I really think you need to go through the program. And I'm thinking, I don't need to go through no program. And then, you know, at that point, it was probably in the middle of February. So it was a little shortly after we've had a couple conversations after you had brought up what you were dealing with, you know, and I was like, maybe it is time I own my shit. Maybe it is time I take some ownership and try to figure out, like, how can I become the best version of myself that I can? And so I signed up for the next class. It was the first week of April, and man, I was scared shitless. Like, yeah. I get there, and they told us to be there at like 9 o'clock on the dot. So of course I'm there at 8:45. They show up late, and I'm like, they had some miscommunication on the email that was sent out. So I was like, well, what am I into? These people are late. Nobody's here. Like, and we get into that class, and starting to hear other people's stories, and starting to hear, like, I mean, these are some guys that have been through all sorts of like different types of trauma, and like hearing their stories and like understanding, like, man, we all have these same problems at home. We don't know how to relate to our significant others, or we don't know how to relate to the people that are important to us. Like, we're afraid to even talk to our own friends about, like, truly, like, yeah, I know when you're pissed off, but I don't know when you're like really struggling mentally, emotionally. And why are we so disconnected like that? Why is it such a stigmatism that we can't talk about what is bothering us without being sensitive? I mean, we all know that one sensitive guy. Like, everybody always gives them stuff. But why can't we just accept the fact that, you know what, like, there's times we need to talk about the shit. And you need to be able to have that support group. And so I went through that 5 days. And it was hard as shit. Like, listen to other people's stories. You start to feel the guilt. Like, well, my story is not as good as his story. Like, you know, you start to think those things.
Start doing comparisons.
And you start to feel like, why am I struggling? Like, he's got it way worse than I am. Why am I being such a little bitch and not understand? Like, he's dealing with more than him, and he seems like he's doing all right. Like, what? Like, you got to quit worrying about that.
Yeah.
Like, what you got to worry about is, like, man, if it's bothering you, talk about it. No matter like what the outcome is going to be, what somebody else's judgment of you is, because I guarantee you, as soon as you talk about it, you're going to feel instantly 100% better.
Yeah.
And you know what? If that person doesn't relate to you or doesn't have anything, or they're going to judge you, it's time to kick them to the curb.
Yeah.
They need to be out of your circle.
100%.
They ain't worth it. And if they can't like bond with you or give you guidance, like, or be able to, I don't know, coddle you a little bit, and like, when you're feeling that way, like, yeah, it's time to reevaluate who you're hanging out with. So that process was tough, but it was probably the most life-changing thing I've done since I went to the service.
One of the things that I experienced when I was going through my battle was some of the people that for giving me the support and the empathy and the encouragement for some of the people that I never would have expected I was going to get it from, like you, for example. And some of the people that I thought that I would get it from, I wasn't getting it from, which was weird for me. That was a weird, and I'm not saying that there was a lot of people like that, but it quickly opened my eyes to being like, sometimes the people who you think are your friends aren't your friends. And it kind of gave me a reason to kind of step back and reevaluate. Well, then how do you know who your friends are? You talk about real life shit.
Yep.
You talk about real shit, not the surface shit. Like, how many ducks did you shoot? How big was the deer you shot? How many girls were you with, since you turned 16? All of that stuff that doesn't matter. Like, talking about real life, deep, beneath the surface, in the heart stuff. That's where you figure out who your real friends are. And that's where I started kind of evaluating my life a little bit, going, you know what? Some of these people that I kind of considered my friends who act like they don't give two shits about what I'm doing, or maybe even a little bit ashamed about the fact. And I don't know this. This is pure speculation on my part, but maybe ashamed, like, oh my God, Ronnie's gone mental. He's doing a podcast and he's talking about all of his deep, dark secrets, whatever. Like, yeah, because apparently I couldn't tell you about it. Right. So, anyway, I only say that to say that, one, sometimes you don't know who your friends are, but you will find out. You will find out when you open up, and you have to open up.
Yeah.
And your lowest point, I feel like, for both of you guys, you guys found out who your friends were.
Oh, for sure.
When your lowest point, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah, you really find out who your circle is and who your support really is once you get to that point. I mean, I've had some pretty rough spats. I mean, so probably the hardest thing I'll talk about is I said October, pistol in my mouth, ready to do it. And the only reason why I didn't kill myself was I'd fucked up so much shit in my life that I was afraid I'd fuck it up. I wouldn't fucking finish it. And then I thought about my daughter, and that's when I really started the healing process, but I didn't know how to go about it. And as I went through that, and then December hit and some stuff went on work-wise and personally, and I just didn't know how to handle those objections and overcome it. And I'm my sense of worth just went to shit. No matter how much I achieve, it's it's never good enough. I just got tired of feeling that way. And I started to reevaluate things and trying to figure out what truly is important to Nate Meyer. What really is going to make me live the rest of my life happy. And I mean, January was busy with the guidings going full tilt. So I didn't really have I was so busy and preoccupied. I didn't really have the time to really digest what had really gone on. Just knew I wasn't in a place I wanted to be. February kind of started to slow back down where I could start to gain my thoughts and spend a little bit more time thinking about how those poor choices and the things and the actions and everything around me, starting to kind of do an assessment of who are the people that are important to me in life, who are the people that stand behind me, who can I talk to, what direction do I want to go career-wise, trying to find that focus again and get my grounding and get my feet back down and tighten those bootstraps. What direction do I want to go? And I'm still in that process of really trying to figure it out. I mean, the hunting business is starting to really take off. My granite business is great. So it's you got two. How do I find the balance? How do I find the balance at home? How do I make all this stuff work, make everybody happy, make myself happy, not let go, somebody's not sacrificing. And trying to find that work, love, life balance is, man, it's the hardest thing I've ever done.
It's hard, and you're not going to conquer it overnight, bro.
No,
you're not.
No, it's not.
I'm still a work in progress also, but the thing that is the most freeing, and I was getting back to the whole, finding out who your friends are and by opening up and talking about real life stuff, because the hardest part about that is that empty feeling that you're all alone and that you're the only one going through it, and that you're going to be inconveniencing somebody else's life or bringing them down to a negative level, and they're going to then be a product of your negative environment. It's it's basically Satan telling you that you're useless. In my opinion, that's what it is. I mean, that we can get biblical if you want, but it's Satan telling you that you're useless, and it's Satan winning, and he's winning. And I personally just think that, I got to be careful how I say this because I hate taking medication. I hate it. Mm-hmm. I do take it. There are some people who are, all about taking medication. As a matter of fact, Ginny Matthews, who was on the last podcast, she calls herself Prozac Ginny. She has no shame in telling the world that she's on Prozac, and all the power to her for that.
Right.
There are some people who do not believe in the medication and think it has terrible side effects, and they only believe in holistic healing, right? I don't want to be on medication if I don't have to be. The medication was just a stepping stone for me to find the clarity, to get the first step of clarity, to figure out what direction I needed to go in to get healed. And if it wasn't for the medication, I wouldn't have had the clarity to know that I need to open up and talk about this. The biggest medicine for me and the biggest thing that I'm an advocate about is just making sure that I can preach to as many people as possible that internalizing deep, dark, emotional thoughts is destructive. Very and the longer you hold on to it, the closer you get to, like Nate, putting a freaking gun in your mouth, or me having thoughts about suicide more times than I can count. And man, that's
a shitty feeling.
Dude,
like that is to even start to man, I can for me to say that those thoughts still don't come across my mind would be a complete lie. I still have that tendencies, and I'm an anti-medicine guy. I feel that as a human, there's a way to overcome this by pure brain power and pure willingness, and that's your thing. That's cool. Yeah, everybody's different, and I don't hate anybody for what. As long as you're trying to heal, go about it as long as it's healthy. Yeah. But yeah, those thoughts it's a shitty feeling to know that you even thought about it. And that makes it even harder to even talk about it because you're I don't want them to put me in, they're going to put me in a padded room and lock me up for fucking 30 days. I don't, why am I going to tell somebody what I truly feel right now? And let them be concerned. I mean, should they have been concerned? Obviously, if it got to the point where it got almost with me that night, and we just as even women too, because with the Battle of the End, we also have a women cohort too that struggle with these same issues. And when did it become? I mean, we look at these school shootings and stuff, and we want to go and blame guns. What we have a problem with in the United States is mental health. Mental health. Mm-hmm. We just brush it under the rug. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's just talking about sex. It's just taboo. You don't need to talk about your mental health. We're all happy. No. You have to be able to comfortable, be able to talk about the things that are truly bothering you. Because if you don't express it and you internalize it, now you're just building a pressure bomb. Eventually something's going to poke it and it's going to explode, and it's going to be way worse dealing with picking up those pieces than it was if you just started the process. The thing that I enjoy the most out of this whole process, and again, I'm not healed, I haven't exorcised the demons, I've got I got a road ahead of me. But the thing that I love, look, my background has been in radio, where I've always been kind of in the limelight. Then you transition into TV, so you're still kind of in the limelight, and you got what looks or appears to be is thousands of friends, right? You got all these people who love you, oh shit, what if I tell them about the fact that I'm, suicidal, or I have suicidal thoughts, and I'm depressed and I'm crying myself to sleep, and, the thought of my daughter's the only thing that's keeping me alive. Would that change their opinion of me? Would they still love me as much? I would rather, now knowing what I know now, and I'm hoping that somebody who's listening to this who may be struggling with the same thing will figure this out as well, is I would rather open up to the entire world, and 3/4 of them, 7/8 of them, a majority of them think I'm mental. Judge me for whatever you want to judge. But I know now who my friends are. True.
Mm-hmm. I know who those people are that I can lean on, who I can trust, who will have my back and I can have their back, because there is a serious, serious peace of mind that comes with knowing that you have the ability to open up free of judgment or any judgment, really. I mean, that's the main thing. It's just the fear of judgment and how you might be. I don't care anymore. I mean, I try not to care. I say I don't care anymore. There are times where I find myself caring, but I'm really trying to challenge myself not to give a shit anymore about what any other. Here's the thing, and I've said this in the past. A big part of my success came because I didn't give a damn about what people thought. And then I got to a certain level to where like, oh, I'm being recognized. I'm being noticed for being successful. And then that's when I started to care about what other people think. And then all of a sudden the things started to unravel a little bit. So anyway, I'm not trying to say all this to make this about me. I'm just trying to echo everything that's being said in this conversation about the importance of finding. Well, first of all, don't give a shit what anybody thinks. Talk about it. Open up. I didn't know that I wanted to talk to Nate Meyer about this. I didn't know if this was going to be the guy that was going to go around on my back and he was going to be talking about how I'm a big pussy and this, that, and other. And lo and behold, he turned out to be one of my closest friends about the topic. And we check in with each other. At least we try to once a week, just to say, hey man, I'm checking on you. How you doing? And there's a genuine love and concern and empathy for one another that I would have otherwise never knew. And actually would have been completely wrong about Nate had I not opened up that day and said something.
Yeah, it's definitely true. And I find that with you, with my relationship with you and some other people that I've opened up with about it. And it's like, we have to quit worrying and just, if it's on your mind and it's bothering you and it's affecting you, like you got to find a way to talk to about it. And if it puts you just got to start to like learn to be uncomfortable with your emotions. I mean, we know we can put ourselves in vulnerable and uncomfortable situations when it comes to work or anything else like that if you're excelling. But like, in order for you to excel with your emotions, you have to be able to put that out there. And you have to and it's very personal, vulnerable stuff that it could be used against you. But I'd rather somebody use that against me than something else negative attached to it. Because at that point, if they're going to air my laundry, at least it's truth. Like, you know what? I struggle with it and I own it. Like, yeah. Well, you going to hate me for it? Like,
sure.
How are you going to look at me any different? Like, we all struggle with these problems.
Who cares?
We all, at some point, whether it's a trauma-related depression, like we deal with negative thoughts. And it's like trying to create that mindset to like find the gratitude in life, and putting a positive mindset and just not letting those little things trigger you, whether it's traffic, getting up in the morning and you open up social media and you start your day off, whether it's envy, jealousy, whatever it is that you get from social media that triggers you, like avoiding those things and like trying to bring back the happiness, trying to look at life totally different than through somebody else's highlight reel.
Yep. 100%. Well, dude, I do love you and I'm proud of you. And I know that this, even coming on this podcast, was a huge, big step for you.
It was huge. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to talk about it.
It is.
You're putting yourself out there, and now, like, and that's what I had told people close to me today, like what I was doing. And I was like, man, it's a big step for me, like to be able to put myself in a vulnerable situation, tell my story, and not worry about like, I don't care what people think about me. Like, I am who I am. I do what I do. And like, if you don't like it, like, great. Like, I don't care.
Sure.
Like, you're not writing my check and you don't control my future.
That's it, man. I'm super proud of you. I'm grateful for our friendship and where it's been able to evolve in the last several months because of our similar stories. And I guess we're gonna get close to wrapping this up because we've already exceeded 90 minutes on this podcast. It's crazy how quick
it goes.
Yeah, no kidding.
My bladder's telling me it's
we better wrap this up. What's next for Nate Meyer, right? So you've made some like what we both admitted, we got a road ahead of us. We're not cured, but we've made the baby steps to creating a foundation to happiness. So what's next for Nate Meyer?
Right now, my main focus is on my family. With Aiden, which he's not my true son, but I've raised this kid for 5 years. I've neglected some responsibilities, like spending time with him. So now it's like, you can't make up for lost time, but he's a main focus. Obviously my daughter, working on my family, and then I can focus on my career, going the direction I need to go with Valley Oaks and with the countertop business, and letting that path take its course. Like, I'm comfortable where it's at. I want growth, but right now my main focus is improving my internal self, finding my self-love, because if I can't love myself, nobody's going to love me.
Yeah, that other growth will come with your growth.
Yeah, like everything else is going to come with it, but my self-growth and finding and like loving my family again, and like getting that unity, whether it's co-parenting with Stephanie or whatever the future has with us. Like, but right now it's the kids that we've raised together and raising, like, that's my main focus, and then myself, and then growing for the future and feeding off of that.
Awesome. All right. put in your plugs. Whether it's your social media handle, whether it's Valley Oaks.
I don't plug. Like
you do because it's my show and I run the show here, and so you're going to listen to me. Damn it!
Well, if you're needing countertops, Legendary Stone. We're in Independence. We can handle all those countertop needs, and then if you want to go on a hell of a goose hunt, Valley Oaks Outdoors. Look us up on Instagram or Facebook.
And if you have any trouble finding them, reach out to me and I'll be happy to connect you. All right. So when we come back, we're going to wrap up episode 5 of the Papa Ron podcast. I'm so grateful not only for Q, Marathon Media Management, for being here and being the most quiet co-host that anybody could ever ask for.
You're welcome, people. You are welcome.
Also, my good friend, Nate Meyer. I'm really proud of you, bro. I really am. And I know
it's been a pleasure. It's been fun to talk about it.
Proud of both of you guys.
It's not easy to do. I still cringe when it comes to opening up about my struggle. But we're going to wrap up this episode coming up next on the Papa Ron Podcast.
You're listening to the Papa Ron Podcast. Keep up to date on new podcasts, new discussion topics, and future casts. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Search Papa Ron Podcast and be sure to like and leave a comment. Now, back to the show. Here again is your host, Ronnie Phillips.
Thanks again to Marathon Media Management. Again, I would not be here and doing this podcast to the level of which I'm doing it if it wasn't for my good friends Dakota Thurn and Quentin Verlinick. Dakota couldn't be here tonight, but Q was able to be here. So he's the one responsible for running the camera so that this podcast can be offered in video on Spotify and on the Papa Ron Podcast YouTube channel. And again, because of their friendship, without them, there would not be a Papa Ron Podcast. Also, quick thanks to the voice, the imaging voice, for the Papa Ron Podcast. His name is Rick Hunter out of Tucson, Arizona. And the guy kind of producing all of the elements, his name is Rich Donovan. He's out of San Francisco. These guys were 2 guys that I worked with in Tucson back in 2001-ish, I think, somewhere in there. Anyway, Donovan has an online radio station that plays music from the 80s and the top hits of other decades. Check it out online at coolfmonline.com. Next week on the show, which, by the way, before I talk about what's happening next week on the show, I should also mention that it was originally scheduled that Mark Boerichter, former wide receiver of the Kansas City Chiefs, was going to be on this episode, but he had to reschedule because something came up last minute. He's not going to be on next week, but he'll be on the week after that. Next week on the show, I do that every time. Next week on the show is going to be a good friend of mine, Joe Papura from Midwest Land Group. He's an awesome real estate agent that sells land across the Midwest. And he's also a guy who's been struggling with depression and anxiety, and he's got his story to share and how he's been battling with that. We'll talk to him next week about that. Thanks again to my guests, Nate Meyer, Quentin Verlinick. I'm Ronnie Phillips.
You've been listening to the Papa Ron Podcast. If you enjoyed this show, hit subscribe now and tell your friends on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and other social platforms. To participate on the show, leave a message with your comments or questions by calling or texting 816-558-6389. That's 816-558-6389. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Papa Ron Podcast. Papa Ron Podcast.